Good morning, Ron. How are you?
I'm okay.
Am I sounding clearly?
Yes, you sound fine. I was just thinking if we had been able to do this 3 minutes earlier, it would have been 8:44. You know, I love those 44s. But it's good. You know, I don't worry about it so much on conversations as I do my own videos because I have another person there to work into the equation.
You know, a lot of videos I see on YouTube and even the Alex Jones ones, they all have these numbers 707, 333, 444 constantly. It's really wild how the length of the videos match these numbers, and I can never get it. You know, I rarely hit this. Now it's 8:48, so there's something. So let me formally begin.
Okay, you just go ahead and give me a title, and I'll actually be taking some notes while you're talking, instead of going back and listening. I started that last week, actually. I was taking notes as you were talking, so that I have some bullet points or something like that I can go back and create my blurb from.
Okay, integrating enlightenment into normal life. That just came off the top of my head. I don't if it's going to even reflect what I'm going to say today, but somehow it felt right. So you know, I'll just play it by ear and see what comes through.
Well, sometimes I create a title and a blurb, and I've had people tell me you didn't even talk about that. So I know what you're saying.
Well. I finally got the stuff written I wanted to, so I'm going to send you a link with the write-up. It's about the same length as the stuff on the breathing exercises, but it's more theoretical and basically combines and explains all of the stuff we've discussed on yoga, but in, you know, a summarized form. And at the end, I give a general exercise that is very, very basic and very, very, you might say it's one of the few practices that all these that these traditions agree upon in India that often conflict with themselves. So it's both very, very progressive and it's very, very safe and is a good example. If somebody, you know, doesn't feel like, well, this is too structured or whatever, it still gives a good idea of how to combine the various things in a kind of natural manner. So I'm not going to...
I do know there's a lot of people that were raised in Western religions that are taking an interest in learning some of the metaphysical principles of the East. So I think this will be really good.
Exactly. And again, it's one of the things you find. I mean, I found articles on it dating from the 60s, you know, from the original teachers that came over here during that time and even before. But it's, you know, it's always expressed in such a way that it kind of downplays the effects, in my opinion. So I decided to give my take, and of course, you know, I could have edited this. I'm kind of a stickler for trying to present this thing in a clear manner, which is what caused the delays, but I just figured, well, get this out there and, you know, at least it'll give people something. It's good enough. So what I basically did, we have this, the sound that is making weird noises in my ear. Just, as long as it's not doing it on your end, that's okay.
I don't hear it.
Okay. We were talking about meditation, and from meditation into a certain state of awareness that corresponds to well-being, but that's only in terms of the ecstatic component, or the, shall we say, the blissful component that people often talk about. What basically occurs is that people will do something that's concentration-based, and then automatically shift into this state of awareness that is the background, the ground state. It's the ocean instead of the waves, instead of specific patterns, vibrations, information, to go into the basis of awareness, the actual field where you're in the medium of the waves instead of the waves themselves. And they call this a void state. This is actually what Buddha meant when he was talking about nirvana. And it is a doorway into true enlightenment, which is a process. It is not a pow, that's it, and then we go on our merry ways. That's confused with peak experiences, which are samples of enlightenment, and they can be also of varying degrees. Some of them, you know, a peak experience can be life-altering, but it can also be life-altering in a major way or in a minor way, or it can turn a commoner into a saint, or it can turn somebody into a visionary, or just change everything. But they always have
all on the road to Damascus thing.
Exactly. That's a peak experience. And these experiences, people think, oh, that's enlightenment. That's just a tap on the shoulder, really. And it's a dramatic tap on the shoulder for the purpose of creating dramatic change in a mundane situation, when somebody is usually resistant to it. Enlightenment is usually more gradual, and it reaches a threshold, and you notice the threshold, and you cross it, and then your life changes, and the difference is that you are a participator in the process instead of something that's carried along. Peak experiences are often things that happen to you. Enlightenment is something that happens, that is you, that is happening. It is something that is your own being that is occurring at this stage. So that's why they call it transformation. You are transforming, and you can notice the difference. One thing about these integrative dynamics is that you become more lucid. Lucidity is not like taking cocaine or methamphetamine or drinking coffee. It is not just a super alertness. Lucidity means that you are more mindful naturally and that you are more aware, and this means of the body and of the physical world and of the emotional world and everything. And and ideally this occurs in a way that constantly moves back toward balance. It can throw you off balance in order to create a change within your being or you know, in your relationship with the environment and everything. But there's always an attractor somewhere there that moves you toward balance. Sometimes the attractor doesn't kick in until we get way out of balance because of, you know, our own individual conditions. And that often comes in as like a higher voice, something that soothes you, maybe an encounter with another person or more information. But as you move toward progression and integration and harnessing, you notice that these are not coincidences. They don't feel like coincidences. There's another force at work. And it's not necessarily a religious interpretation of a divine intervention, but one can view that in such a manner nevertheless. Because we often dramatize things. We turn happenings that we don't understand into a theatrical representation where, you know, one character comes in and we're the hero of the story and this is what's happening, and all of these different characters are keeping the plot of our progression moving, etc., until it reaches a climax, and we view different theatrical presentations in our lives. That's why all of these truths are conveyed in the form of myth and archetypal rendering. This is how we function. It doesn't mean it's false. It just means that this is the better way. You know, it's almost like, okay, we speak in a language. Words, however, are not truth. They are representations of truth. In this way, our modeling of any reality frame into a kind of theatrical presentation, into a drama. The word drama basically means action. It comes from the Greek word that means verb, to do. So it's a doing. Dramas are not to be confused with tragedies and comedies. You know, they're just any kind of doing, structured doing for a certain purpose, to present a purpose and develop it toward a climax. So we can view our lives that way, but at a deeper level as you progress toward yoga. In fact, there are 3 levels according to one tradition. You have the herd of human beings. You have the herd type who are asleep, and even if they think they're awake, they can still be, you know, swayed like lemmings in a kind of group mentality. People who are under the matrix. Then you have the hero type, which understands what's going on and is understanding that they are waking up, and at this point they're willing to take risks of confronting their fear, the negativity they didn't want to confront, and do everything that the Matrix tells them they should not do. And actually get into... Yeah, yeah, so do I. And when you get into that, there's a progression. That's where, with the hero type, basically, you are in the drama of the situation. you are in the hero's journey, for example, that Joseph Campbell talked about. And then you go into the true divine human, which transcends all of that. Now, transcendence does not mean escape. It means basically, I don't need this anymore. I've outgrown that. I've outgrown the dramatizing. I can have fun in a different way. It doesn't mean that I don't have fun anymore. It's just the difference between what children like to see on TV and what adults like to see on TV. You know, there's still, you know, in that case, there's still dramas. But the thing is that if you take it to a greater extent, to the divine drama or the divine theater, or the, you know, the so-called game that someone mentioned in your interview before last week, that it's all a game in all of this. This is how I view the game version, or it's all a play. That's another level than how we human beings, even at the hero level, define drama and play. Of course, at the herd level, it's really pathetic. I mean, when you define trauma, it's basically, you know, they're rats in a maze, and there's some controller of the maze, and it's not even a theater; it's just an experiment or something by really lunatic scientists, mad scientists. But in any case, this is what I wanted to just subtly get into, because you talked in a previous video about that politics should be spiritual, and that politics is really spiritual. And this is basically something with which I agree, because you have the profane, and it needs to become sacred. It is evolving to become sacred. Sacred and profane are one and the same thing, but their true nature is sacred. But people have a tendency to take the sacred and make it profane, to profane the sacred. So when somebody hears that reality is a game, they may not get the sacred interpretation of that. And so they get the profane interpretation of that. It's a game of poker. It's a game of chess. It's a game of rugby. There's winners, there's losers. Or it doesn't matter. I mean, you know, people can be suffering, but hey, it's still a game. It's going to end, you know, and we're all going to laugh about it in the end. It's not really how it works at the divine level. Things are more intense as you go along. Spiritual people are often, well, I say that in brackets here, in quotes, because human spirituality has been saturated with denial, even at the best of examples. And so there's an instinctive dynamic, and it's probably an evolutionary, you know, at the time it was probably appropriate, or, you know, the conditions weren't ripe for it to be otherwise. But spirituality is rife with denial and escapism as a defense mechanism, because if everybody back in the day had to face everything, they would never be able to get to climb the ladder, so to speak, and get to a viewpoint at the top of the mountain. If they had to keep fighting all the demons and then, or even moving through and trying to integrate everything with the, with the way things were, and nobody would probably reach the so-called top of the mountain. So denial at one time is a mechanism to say, okay, let me just forget about all this other stuff and just see where this goes. Even if I have to drop fragments of myself along the way, at least something is going to make it. You know, and when that something is going to make it, then it can come down and start to climb again, this time with a reference of the top, with a little video to show themselves and everybody to keep reminding themselves with a memory, with a feeling, with something in order to transmit. Even if it becomes corrupt along the way, the path has already been, there is a path. It's there. It's not just, well, go up, you know, because everything gets topsy-turvy when you're confronting the chaos of evolutionary challenge, even gravity, even your sense of evolutionary gravity, which is up, which is down. We see that in the Matrix as well. So a lot of these things, like the idea that it's all a game or it's all a contract, it's another idea. There is such thing as a divine contract. The Hebrews called it the covenant. And a covenant is basically, if you read some of the mystical literature, you realize that when they're talking about a covenant, they're talking about innate abilities in human beings. Human genetics were seen by ancient peoples, the predisposition towards psychic abilities and all of that, as a divine covenant. God came to people and said, look, man, if you meditate, then you get all these abilities. This is my agreement with you. I gave you this possibility. Because when you do reach all these agreements, we will be one, and you will be my chosen people. You know, in the sense of the reason I chose you was so we could be one. And this applies, of course, to all people. Israel pertains to the people that are integrating and evolving consciously. They are the awakened people that have gone from the herd mentality where all the other beings are on the planet and have moved into the hero mentality. The way I interpret the word Israel is that these are the heroes of the planet, the hero people, the ones that are actually moving. And it doesn't mean that everybody else is crap. It means that the God has chosen these people, so to speak, because people, you know, in ancient times believed in fate, in, well, you know, it was meant to be that you have these abilities and the other person doesn't. So it's just a way of describing the situation. And yet we take this sacred, organic, natural development and turn it into a political, socio-economic concept, a banker concept, a contract thing. And which psychopaths say, oh, wow, you interpret the sacred in this way? Well, we're going to use it for our system to fool you because your subconscious is going to constantly reference the sacred. So we can tell you a whole bunch of lies, and your subconscious is going to constantly, you know, games in the old days were all sacred. You had people actually using games in order to resolve situations. Instead of going to war, let's play a game and the winner takes all. You know, or, you know, we can resolve the situation because the gods were thought to judge the games. They were thought to say, okay, you know, the gods are going to favor the one who's going to win. And this was just a ritualized way to do it. We see that in the animal kingdom. You know, animals
We see it in some of the more primitive societies, so-called primitive societies.
Exactly. And we see it in mammals and we see it in reptiles. It's the way nature is trying to say, look, man, you don't have to kill each other. You know, because eventually if every animal resorted to warfare, there would be nobody left, even before humans evolved, and way before that. So, and if animals become too chaotic like they did in the dinosaur era, where you saw the types of predators and, you know, who knows what was going on there, then you have a cosmic event. You know, the vibration of the planet affects the cosmos. It's like a thorn in the galaxy's side. And so you do have an organic interconnection with everything, and nature does not want resets. But resets often happen because the planet Earth, the solar system, and everything is in a rather unique position of a kind of evolutionary pivot. And so things that are going on here are more than a game. I mean, there may not be even words for it. This is it's a covenant. It's a kind of covenant with creation that the local area has with the global cosmic dynamic. And so this covenant has nothing to do with contracts in the socio-economic sense. It is a natural thing. That's what common law is. Common law is based on natural covenants. Every single law of common law is an agreement that's based on common sense. It's basically, well, this is the way it is. This is the natural way. We all agree. Snowflakes may all be unique, but they all have 6 sides. They're all white and they're all cold. They're all made of water and dust. So common law basically is an affirmation of what we all have in common, our common desires. Everything else is a variation on the theme, and the foundation of common law ensures that we're not going to get in each other's way, and you've said this often. So people, for better or worse, whether they intend to or not, when they use sacred dynamics, I mean, even the Bible says, don't take the Lord's name in vain. This is really what they meant. You see, taking the Lord's name in the old days was using a word of power. You affected reality when you expressed the sacred. The sacred is known as sacred because it touches reality in an intimate and deep manner, and you create changes when you express it. It actually touches it. You know, it's like Jackie Ivanko, you know, the way she evokes emotions in you. This is something that is sacred to you, and, you know, sacred to many people. And it's beautiful for that reason. And the beauty and the sacred come and touch you. But if all of a sudden somebody came and started desecrating the song and you know, coming and trampling it and started screaming during the performance or whatever, then that is profaning it. It is sabotaging the intimate union that brings something into realization of its true nature. So when people would say, you know, don't say the Lord's name in vain, it was almost like a magical act, you know. Don't express something that is sacred in a way that does the opposite of what is intended to do. It creates separation instead of creating connection. This is what many people do inadvertently, and they don't realize it most often, when they take concepts like contract and game, and it's on the fifth dimension, you know, let's all go there and everything is going to be fine, or ego. All of these are sacred concepts at some level if you really understand them and feel into them. Yes?
Actually, I think a lot of religion has profaned the sacred.
Yes.
Which is why so many religious people are in bondage, and they don't recognize themselves as being religious. I mean, I know a lot of people that, because of what I've gone through in my life, that I would look at and say, you're very religious. But they would say, no, I'm spiritual, not religious. They can't even see it because they're still in it.
I agree. And not only that, I would say that one definition of religion is taking the Lord's name in vain. Because that is all that religions do. Desecrating the sacred is expressed in the Bible as taking the Lord's name. It doesn't mean that you have some name and use it whenever you get emotionally upset. On the contrary, it means that you live your life in accordance to a kind of, like the Pharisees. The Pharisees were constantly taking the Lord's name in vain. This is where Jesus would get pissed off the most. When he met people like the Pharisees or the money changers and all of this, desecrating the sacred is a big thing, especially in Christianity. People who are Christians and who are afraid of the New Age stuff or the Eastern stuff or whatever, at least they can go back to this concept and see that desecrating the sacred, it's almost like, you know, in the Orthodox tradition, the sin against the Holy Ghost is the greatest sin you can commit. It's almost like the only unforgivable sin, and it connects to this as well. That goes even deeper. So I'm saying that as you move into meditation, you understand these things, and you understand them on their own terms, and you say, okay, these are children, they don't know what they do, you know. And of course, if you go around talking about it, people are going to think you're an arrogant bastard, you know. Oh, so you think... So the point is that you're not feeling arrogant or egotistical if you start seeing everybody else who's asleep around you, or more asleep than you are at least, as an adult views a child. It's basically a kind of realistic situation, and anybody who basically understands the conspiracy stuff and what's really going on to a certain extent, when they confront something who's completely asleep, they won't say, yeah, I'm better than you, but they will say, look, man, we're not on equal footing here. We're in different states. I'm in a different category of humanity than you are, and this is just the way it is. It doesn't mean you're egotistical. We have to avoid this fear of putting everything, you know, of not putting everything on a common denominator. The system manipulates us into political correctness constantly. And one of the reasons is we can't handle our own egos. We misunderstand it continuously because the programs are telling us what to do, not our own individuality. This is what meditation will help you to do, because when you move from sensory inversion and energetic understanding and to be able to sustain your own sense of being, that's meditation. Meditation basically moves you to face your own sense of what it is to be. Who are you? What is being? These questions, basically, not intellectually, but in your felt sense, they answer. And it is getting into silence, because it is moving beyond the vibrations and moving into the background. Even when you're mindful, you observe a thought, for example, but what's behind the thought? What's the space between the words and between the letters and between the lines? What's the paper upon which the words are written? Meditation brings you into contact with the paper of reality, with the medium of it. And then you begin becoming more and more able to interpret that medium as a felt sense, as something that, wow, you know, it's a vibration, but it's the ground state. Physicists have a term called ground state energy. This is close to the 0-point field concept. Basically, that even if you freeze everything, there's always going to be a very slow rumble at the bottom. Nothing's going to stop completely. It always keeps moving. So this ground state energy, this so-called 0 point, is what meditation, the process of meditation, leads us to be able to perceive. That is samadhi. That is the nexus state. And this nexus state is the gateway to enlightenment. I will talk about this a little more in terms of developing abilities, but I want to say that as you progress, if you take this seriously in terms of application and have patience and commitment, as you progress, you become more aware of the nuances of your progression, and by the time you reach the state of recognizing samadhi, you'll be able to see that, oh, I've crossed the threshold into a whole new territory, a whole new way of being that I thought I understood before, but now is presented to me in a different way. My higher self and I are one. And it's a primary unity that's more important at this point than considering the unity between you and the other person and everything, because that unity will help me understand what it means to be one with another person at the horizontal level we talked about. This too is often misunderstood. You have people thinking that we have to give up our possessions because we're one. You know, this is confusing, bringing the sacred into profane, taking the profane and making it sacred or realizing its sacredness is often confused with the other way around, with actually profaning the sacred. So I have expressed all of these things in terms of, the general theme of meditation and enlightenment in life. And, of course, the whole thing about profanity and the sacred is connected to how enlightenment comes into life. You confront this issue. And I've done so because of all of the different ideas expressed this past week over the video, so I wanted to integrate all of that. And next week we'll move on to see exactly what this means in terms of abilities. But I want to say one more thing. From here on in, it's very difficult because all of these are stages or at least areas where you cross thresholds and you gain new levels of being capable to understand certain things. So whatever I say, it's probably going to miss the mark, and it may even create misunderstandings or people getting bored or whatever, but who cares? The thing is that people want to hear about the abilities and what kind of abilities at least the yoga tradition promises as you move through these kinds of processes. But it's far more wonderful and yet far more natural than one would ever expect. And that is what I wanted to say today.
Wow, you actually finished before 30 minutes. I don't know that happened for a while.
yeah, it's been a while. And I've been rushing because I thought, oh my God, I've been talking for 45 minutes already, and you didn't tell me. How long has it been?
28 minutes.
Okay, that's good. In the ballpark. Cool.
Okay, so this is good, Aristo, and I do appreciate our conversations, and so do others appreciate them. And I get lots of good feedback from people that are really willing to go deeper than the average person. And they're the ones that you're reaching. So this is good.
I appreciate what you just said. Thank you very much, and namaste. Till next time.
Namaste.